Well, you're at a Kasparian with you guys. Look, here in LA, we've been beset by a series of plagues. Now it's locusts. And that's why we keep coming to you from our home studios, because the heat wave, the power got knocked out, etc. So, but
Yeah.
anyways, just a couple more days. We'll be back. It'll be the fall. It'll be great. So don't worry about it. Okay. Also today, dun, 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 it's really Monday Night Football. It's Thursday Night Football, but still, it's the beginning of the football season. I'm jazzed up, so you'll see me a little bit more hyped up, believe it or not. If
Oh
that's
my God.
yeah.
Great.
So there's
Great.
some chance that I'm going to start every story with Anna. That's a good point. On the other hand, da, 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 da.
I have to say, look, I am not a football aficionado as you are, and as Emma Vigland is. But I will say this, that is a catchy tune. Da 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 da. Like I love it. It's great.
Again, it's Monday night, not Thursday Night Football, but you guys all get the point because the season starts on Thursday night now. Okay, and Anna, I appreciate the concession from a person who's not only a sports fan but from time to time hates it. Okay, all right, let's do it. Let's do the show. Unfortunately, we start with tragic news. Is it 96? It's a long life. God bless. Anyways, yes.
Well, as my father would say, whose cares? So some people do. Let's be fair. So let's talk about it. Queen Elizabeth II, the longest reigning British monarch, has passed away at the age of 96. This is a story that many people are paying close attention to today, and I wish I had more to say about it. However, I think the video that we're about to show you is a good example, a good explanation of exactly how I personally feel. Let's take a look.
I just wonder what you thought, what your first reaction was when you heard the news that the Queen is under medical supervision.
I mean, I think it's pretty sad, like, when anyone kind of gets in that position, like, you wouldn't want that to happen to your own family member. But I'm not, like, the biggest fan of the Queen or just, like, the monarchy in general, so I wasn't, like, that upset or overwhelmed by it. It was just something that happens, I guess.
You're not the biggest fan of the monarchy. I wonder why.
Mainly to do with like British like colonial history, things like that. A lot of things that have gone on which have been quite shady, even like recently with like Prince Andrew and everything. So yeah, I'm not really their biggest fan.
So what I liked about her statement, and look, I don't mean to tone police the individuals who are being far more aggressive in their messaging about the Queen, the monarchy, and colonialism. However, I appreciated her measured critique of the monarchy. And I think that's really what a lot of people are feeling in the country, not just in the UK, of course, I think around the world. Something that really stood out to me recently was the trip that Prince Charles had, Prince William. Prince William had taken to Jamaica with his wife, Kate Middleton, and they were protested because of the history of colonialism, the impact it's had on people's lives across the globe. And so I think it's totally okay to mention that. And I like the way that the person being interviewed by CNN in that video mentioned it in a respectable way, while also bringing up some of the other issues that have come up with the royal family in recent years. So I'll give you some more details about this in just a moment. But Cenk, I want to give you a chance to jump in.
Yeah. So, look, it's outdated. It's anachronistic. You guys know it. And so I know we're supposed to respect the feelings of the British here because they're very, very sensitive about their queen and their royalty, et cetera. But do I have to respect that? The queen makes no sense, obviously. Neither does a king. None of this old school monarchy makes sense. Do you know that upon her death, right before her death, she remained the sovereign leader of 15 nations, including Australia, New Zealand, and Canada. She was a sovereign leader of Canada, and she's the head of the Commonwealth of more than 50 nations. This would actually be a really good time for those nations to declare their independence. So I get it. It's just ceremonial, right? But at the same time, you don't need that ceremony. That's from when her family conquered your entire country and then robbed it of its natural resources. Okay, anyways. And so look, but she's a perfectly lovely person, it appears, and And, and everybody says she did a great job. And I get it. I read on all the details, and she was brave during World War II. She helped bring a country together. She was, did this cutesy thing when she joined the military. Let's keep it, I say cutesy, because really they were going to have her go fight the Nazis. Of course they weren't. But she actually became a mechanic for 3 months and did car repairs and the whole thing. And that was great. She did the same rations as the British citizens. She didn't have to do that. So I give her credit. And by the way, the royal family was asked to leave for Canada so they wouldn't get killed during the war, and they refused, including her. So look, plenty of bravery there in the early years. And everybody's always like, oh, she did such a fantastic job. Of course, it depends on your perspective. Look, when she took over in 1952, that was 70 years ago, the British ruled the world. Well, look, it was after World War II, so less so, obviously. But their empire was the largest the world had ever seen. Now they're, a decent-sized country. With decent-sized power, but nothing like they had before. So you could look at that and say, you know what? In some ways, she lost the British Empire. Drams. Okay. But I would say, no, actually, she did it. She's kind of like, she might have asked at the end, does Gorbachev still live? Because she's, in a sense, a slow-motion Gorbachev. She allowed the dissolution of the British Empire without bloodshed. And there's something you can give her, or without way more bloodshed. So there's something that you could give her some real credit for.
All right, Uygur coming in with some balance. I like it. Well, the announcement was made in this way. The royal family Twitter page had posted that the Queen died peacefully at Balmoral this afternoon. The King and the Queen consort will remain there this evening and will return to London tomorrow. They included that photo of her. She had fairly recently contracted COVID, and it really did a number on her. She was incredibly sick, fatigued, and it's kind of unclear whether she recovered from that, considering that she was already very old. She's died at 96. These stories, just full disclosure, are very difficult for me to talk about because I really don't know what to say when someone dies. It's an awkward thing to have to cover. Now, she died at the Balmoral Castle, her beloved summer home in the Scottish Highlands. I looked at some images. It did look lovely. Many of her 4 children, 8 grandchildren, and 12 great-grandchildren were there or on their way there, including her son, Prince Charles, who will be the heir to the throne. So he, I guess, is going to be the King of England. Even though it's still just a ceremonial position. So one piece of trivia that might be fascinating for you, just a reminder that Queen Elizabeth has reigned for 30% of United States history. Just let that sink in. It gives you a sense of just how new this country really is, and also just how long she was the monarch of England.
Yeah, I've got more fun trivia real quick here to end the story. So first off, she presided over 15 prime ministers and 14 U.S. presidents, from Harry Truman to Joe Biden. As I said earlier, 70 years. The British had a plan in place for this moment so they could call people in discreetly. It was called Operation London Bridge. And were going to tell the prime minister that the Queen has passed with the code words of the London Bridge has fallen, or the London Bridge is down. I don't know why they need code words. It's the prime minister, and they're about to announce it to the whole world anyway. They could just say the Queen died. And yes, the Queen is dead. Long live the King. That leads me to Charles. He is now King Charles III. You guys really want to, serve under King Charles III? They're just people. I know everybody knows that now, but I guess some folks are clinging on to the old days where they're like, and by the way, there's some people in America, I interviewed one of them, right-wingers, including Peter Thiel, Blake Master, J.D. Vance, that are now looking forward to a monarchy in America. So there's still some lunatics who think, oh yeah, those people are special and chosen by God to rule over us. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. That was obviously an excuse they used to just hold power over you. Last fun fact, apparently Charles was thinking of going with King George VII, I think. Why? Why did they change their name in the middle? It's so weird, but he didn't. and he's now officially King Charles III.
Cool. All right. Well, that does it for our coverage of this story, and I'm very happy to move off of it and talk about other things. So let's do that. Let's move on.
Four people are dead after a 19-year-old man went on a shooting rampage in Memphis, Tennessee. Police say 19-year-old Ezekiel Kelly was arrested following a high-speed chase and is being transported to the Shelby County Jail.
A 19-year-old man live streamed his shooting rampage that left 4 people dead and 3 others injured in Memphis, Tennessee. Now, this story is bringing up more debates about sentencing, whether or not criminal justice reform makes sense. And I want to kind of cut through some of those narratives and get to what I think the real issue is here. Now, to give you some more context into this story, the Memphis Police Department identified the suspect in this rampage, which the authorities said included no fewer than 8 crime scenes and crossed into neighboring Mississippi as Ezekiel Kelly. Now, the shooting began at 1 a.m. on Wednesday morning and continued through the late evening hours. And residents in the area were advised to shelter in place as the gunman led police on a hours-long manhunt. Luckily, they did find him. They did put him in custody, and he is now facing several serious charges. Now, the mayor of Memphis, Tennessee, was furious at how the justice system worked in this case because not too long ago, Ezekiel Kelly was behind bars, and he's going to explain in the next video exactly what happened and what he thinks is wrong with how he was sentenced. Let's watch.
Ezekiel Kelly was charged with criminal attempted first-degree murder, but pled guilty in April of 2021 to the lesser charge of aggravated assault. He was sentenced to 3 years, but only served 11 months in prison. The problem is not the Memphis Police Department, because they're arresting people. The problem is this.
So Mayor Strickland argues that he was treated like in a very soft way, that he didn't spend enough time in prison. I think it's important to understand that he was in jail awaiting trial for nearly the amount of time that he was sentenced. So the reason why it appears that he got out after 11 months is because he received credit for time served as the trial was taking place. So CBS News had said, given the time he spent awaiting a resolution of his charges, he likely got credit for time served and spent more than 2 years behind bars. Okay, so I give you that information because I think the debate that's taking place right now is focusing on the wrong issue. The debate is focusing merely on the length of his sentence, which I think doesn't really matter considering literally the same week we heard about another individual in Memphis, Tennessee, who had served 20 years behind bars for kidnapping, okay? He was arrested back in 2000. He was convicted of kidnapping an attorney. He was sentenced to 20 years in prison. He served the full 20 years. He was released in 2020. And just this week, we found out that he is now the suspect in a murder involving an elementary school teacher. And so the issue that I have with this debate about sentencing is it completely leaves out the relevant discussion about how unless we do something to reform our prison system, to ensure that it rehabilitates people, it doesn't really matter how much time someone spends behind bars when they get out, if they're imprisoned in a situation where they get raped, where they deal with violence, where they deal with cruel and unusual punishment. Okay, solitary confinement, that doesn't rehabilitate people. You could put someone behind bars for 50 years in those conditions, they will come out and they will not be rehabilitated. And that is the issue that I have with a lot of the discussions that are taking place right now about sentencing. And obviously there are other themes here that we've talked about a million times, Cenk, regarding gun violence in this country, the easy accessibility of guns, and all of that. So I wanted you to jump in and share your thoughts before I give you some more details about what happened during this shooting spree. And you're muted, Cenk.
Sorry about that, guys. Okay, this story is kind of a perfect combination of all the things that are wrong in American politics. So the guy has incredibly easy access to weapons. By the way, even though he was charged with attempted murder just a couple of years ago, he had 2 weapons in the car, the weapon he used to kill people. Everybody has weapons. So don't worry, the criminals aren't going to get him. Are you nuts? Criminals are going to get him so easy because they were in an ocean of weaponry. And by the way, the gun manufacturers love that. They love when criminals get their hands on guns and kill people, because then it scares everyone else into buying guns. So the right wing has totally screwed us on that. And yes, part of what's happened here is on their head. And then you've got the left-wing issues, right? And they're real. So we're supposed to do smart, logical reform. One of the stories we have in the show today is a woman is in jail in Alabama because she smoked a joint while pregnant. I mean, they treated her brutally. Now, that's a thing that needs to be reformed, right? We're stuffing people into prisons for no goddamn reasons on minor crimes. But then on the other hand, because of so-called reform, we're letting a lot of people walk. So in Tennessee, they passed a law saying, no, whatever the sentence we give you is the sentence you have to serve. And now I'm sure that a lot of progressives hate that, which I always say, yeah, but doesn't it depend? Like if we gave you an 18-year sentence because you smoked a joint, that's mental. We shouldn't do that. We shouldn't have you serve that sentence. You should be pardoned, right? But if we gave you a 3-year sentence on attempted murder, you should probably do the 3 years, right? And so that's an issue for the left. And then finally, for all of us, the thirst for fame. He live streamed some of this because everybody wants to be famous, and a quick way to get famous is to murder people on camera. It's really disgusting.
Yeah, it is disgusting. But again, I just want to reiterate the point that I made earlier, which is to say, talking about whether or not the length of a sentence makes sense is a perfectly fine debate. However, I'm just arguing that in this current environment where we are not focusing on the incredibly important element of prisons and how they need to be reformed, like if we don't provide ways to rehabilitate people as they're incapacitated, as they're in custody, again, it doesn't matter how long they serve behind bars. If the environment in which they're being held turns them into hardened criminals, well, then that's not a justice system. That's not helping anyone. I know that there are some people out there who think, well, the prison system is not about rehabilitation. It's about taking people who pose a threat to public safety, taking them out of that environment and incapacitating them and punishing them. But I disagree. You look at the model in Norway, for instance, where they do absolutely focus on rehabilitation, where they do also take people who pose a threat to public safety out of the public so they can't cause any harm, and then they focus on rehabilitating them until they are ready to be out in society and they're no longer a threat. I would like to move toward that system to help people, because I think that there are people who are who are redeemable. Unfortunately, I think that there are also instances where people are irredeemable, and obviously that's a case-by-case basis. If we're talking about a mass murderer who shows absolutely no remorse and is not responding or reacting well to efforts to rehabilitate him or her, then we're having a different story. But I think the vast majority of people can be rehabilitated. It's just that we don't have a system in place that can make that happen.
Yeah. Look, one more thing about this. You're supposed to do it holistically, right? You're supposed to have mental health. You're supposed to have better prisons. You're supposed to have, cash bail depending on the circumstances, depending on a lot of different factors. Like, is it a violent crime? Is the person potentially going to cause danger to the community? You're supposed to, like I've said for 20 years on this show now, I don't understand why rape is allowed in prison. And I don't understand why that's a thing that everybody views as normal. Like, obviously, we're not going to fund anything about the prisons. Obviously, they're going to be hellholes. Obviously, we're going to stuff a lot of people that didn't do any crimes or minor crimes into those prisons and have them live a living nightmare. And everybody's fine with it. I'm not fine with it. No, we need to reform that, right? But the extremes are not correct. I'm not going to let Dylan Roof out, the killer in Charleston, because, well, we don't have the whole system yet, and we don't have the mental health part of it. We didn't do the rehabilitation part of it. Now let's just let him out, right? No. Do it holistically, and let's get it right. And we obviously don't have any of it right now. And Anna, I'll disagree slightly with one part of it.
Sure.
Yeah, I hear you. Rehabilitation is wonderful, and the Norwegian model is shockingly effective. And should we go towards that? Absolutely. But yes, sometimes it's for prison is for incapacitation. Some people are irredeemable, and I know we're progressive, so our hearts go no, everybody's redeemable. Have you met people? Okay, and so I don't say that lightly, and that would be a very, I hope, a small category. But sometimes you have to take people out of society. If you put Charles Manson back into society, he would have led another death cult. He says he would have. So what do you want us to do? So anyway, but I don't want people to overfocus on that portion of the story. Remember, the number one reason why we have nonstop massacres in America is guns, an ocean of guns.
Yes, absolutely. All right, we got to take a quick break. Let's do that. And just let me know, for everyone who's watching live, thank you for bearing with us as, we're trying to grapple with these rolling blackouts in California. Thank you for being patient with us. We're doing our best. And when we come back from the break, we've got more news for you, including an outrageous story involving a pregnant woman who was jailed for smoking marijuana, and she was forced to sleep on the ground in a jail cell. We've got that and more coming right up.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Oh, also, Renee Martin Tebow. Good to have a Tebow with us on the opening night of the NFL. All right, thank you guys. Hit the join button below if you're watching the video on YouTube, or go to tyt.com/join. It's so easy. Become a member, become a hero. Casper.
All right, let's get to the news. A pregnant woman was kept behind bars in an overcrowded jail for months and was even forced to sleep on the floor because she had admitted to smoking marijuana on the same day she found out she was pregnant. Now, the state of Alabama, where she was jailed, refused to release her unless she entered into a drug rehab facility. But considering the fact that she didn't have a drug addiction, no drug rehab facility was willing to take her in. So she was stuck behind bars because of this insane rule in Alabama that only pertains to pregnant women. Now, police arrested Ashley Banks on May 25th with a small amount of marijuana and a pistol without a permit to carry. Now, I think it is a serious issue when you have a gun that you don't have a permit for, but we're talking about Alabama here, so please spare me Alabama's concern about her being in possession of a weapon. Under normal circumstances, the 23-year-old from Gadsden would have been able to post bond and leave jail until her criminal trial. But Banks admitted to smoking pot on the same day she found out she was pregnant, 2 days before her arrest. In Etowah County, that meant that she couldn't leave jail unless she entered drug rehab, leaving her in limbo for 3 months. Now, if you are a pregnant woman who is suspected of doing any kind of drug while you're pregnant in Alabama, they have the ability to arrest you for it because they have fetal personhood laws there. Okay, they consider a fetus at any stage an individual human life. And so they will do this type of punishment toward the pregnant woman in an effort to send a message about how much they care about lives, how much they care about that unborn fetus, in this case, embryo. But I would say that forcing a woman in an overcrowded jail where she has to sleep on the floor as a result, probably not good for the pregnancy that these local lawmakers purport to care so much about. Let me give you some more details. Now, Dr. Carolyn Suffren, who is an OBGYN, weighed in on this issue, and she wrote an affidavit actually urging the court to release Banks. She says, quote, "The stress and conditions in jail and prisons, including lack of consistent access to standard prenatal care and mental health care, poor diets, poor sanitation, infestations with bugs and vermin, poor ventilation, tension, noise, lack of privacy, lack of family, and community contact can be detrimental to the physical and mental health of pretty much anyone, let's keep it real, but certainly of pregnant women, which can result in poor pregnancy outcomes for both the mother and the baby." I mean, that should be obvious. But when we talk about issues pertaining to pregnant women in this country, and we talk about conservative policies toward those women, we know at this point that it's not about life or death. It's not about valuing the life of the unborn fetus. It's really about power and control. And I think we see that here, considering the condition she was held under. Now, about 6 weeks into her incarceration, she started bleeding and was taken to Gadsden Regional Medical Center, according to court documents. Doctors later diagnosed her with a condition where blood pools near the wall of her uterus. And that condition actually increases the chance that she will miscarry the fetus. And so obviously it's incredibly important for her to be in a safe environment where she has easy access to medical professionals who can help her in case there's any kind of emergency. But Banks said jail officials told her that she could sleep on the bottom bunk of this jail cell because of her high-risk pregnancy. However, her cell had one bottom bunk and 2 women assigned to sleep in it. So the other woman used the bed, according to court documents, and Banks slept on the floor. And she continued to bleed for 5 weeks while she was imprisoned. She also suffered from hunger and fainting spells. She attempted to pay the $10,000 cash bail that was required for her to pay, but since no rehab facility was willing to take her in, she couldn't get out. She couldn't get out and be home as she's awaiting trial for her charges. And Chris Retton, who is an executive director of a substance abuse treatment provider, explains why she was rejected. Okay, it's very, very easy, very clear. I would say that the appropriate thing for them to do is to go to a drug treatment program that matches their level of need. Residential treatment is for people with a serious disorder. And considering the fact that the country is grappling with a serious drug overdose problem involving drugs like fentanyl, for instance, I would argue that forcing a woman who admitted to smoke marijuana to go into a inpatient rehab facility robs someone else of a bed that they need in order to rehabilitate themselves from a serious drug addiction. So there are all sorts of issues with this problem. And honestly, it doesn't surprise me that this is taking place in a state like Alabama.
Yeah, so this is definitive proof. Anyone who claims they're pro-life is full of crap. If they were actually pro-life, they would be livid about what happened in Alabama. But they're not livid at all. They love it. So it proves their actual motivation. Look, so Anna told you, the woman starts bleeding. I mean, if you're pro-life, you should be scared to death that she's going to lose that baby, that life that you care so much about. She continues to bleed for 5 weeks. No one cares. It's right-wingers who put her in jail. The right-wingers love oppressing her. They love punishing her because the point of abortion isn't to protect children or life. The point is to oppress women and for men to get back on top and go, yes, you have to do what we tell you from now on. You remember when we used to beat you around and control your whole lives? Yes, we get to control your lives again. But wait, how about the baby? I thought you cared about the baby. She's bleeding. She's going to lose the baby. No, I don't care about her. She's stuffed in a prison and she has to follow men's orders. Great. Yeah, right-wingers, prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. You're and not also, gonna. There's not gonna be a. Hold on, Anna. There's not gonna be a single right-winger who gives a damn about her. There's not gonna be a single person who's pro-life Who cares about her or a baby? Because they're all goddamn liars. I'm going to add one more thing from Vice. She was forced to sleep on the floor due to overcrowding, as Anna explained. She said even after being diagnosed with a condition that heightened her risk of miscarriage. So they know it heightens her risk of miscarriage. Theoretically, they say, oh my God, if that happens, hey, wait, are we going to charge the warden with murder if that happens? Because you guys say it's a life, it's personhood. Are we going to charge the warden with murder? Of course not, because he's a right-winger, she's poor, and the whole point was oppression. So right-wing, just be honest for the first time in your lives. You don't care about her, you don't care about her baby, all you want is oppression.
Yeah, I mean, I think this story, as you mentioned, is definitive proof of that. And I think it's important to understand that this is not an isolated incident. This is something that we've seen in other red states. And you have to also juxtapose the way, let's say, suspected murderers in Alabama are treated relative to pregnant women who are suspected of using drugs during their pregnancy. So in Alabama, if you are a pregnant woman suspected of doing drugs, you can't just post bond and go home and await your trial. But there are literal rapists and murderers who get to post bond and then go home and await trial. Literally, I'm not kidding. Pregnant women in Alabama are the only ones that this policy applies to. They treat women in Alabama, pregnant women in Alabama, their justice system treats them worse than suspected murderers and rapists. And the other thing I wanted to mention is, Alabama has all sorts of issues here. So the conditions in these jails are, of course, incredibly unsafe. Researchers for the National Advocates of Pregnant Women have tracked more than 150 chemical endangerment cases involving women in that jail that she was being held in since 2010. Alabama also leads the nation in arresting women who use drugs during pregnancy, according to reporting from the Marshall Project, The Frontier, and AL.com. The women who used meth while pregnant and then suffered a stillbirth, a woman who suffered a stillbirth, was actually sentenced to 18 years in prison as a result. And so, look, I'm not trying to make the case that we just have like a hands-off, who cares approach when it comes to people grappling with serious addiction who happen to be pregnant. But if you genuinely care about their lives or the lives of their unborn babies, you don't want to create a system in which women are terrified to seek treatment. Because if you're in Alabama, you're pregnant and you have a drug addiction, seeking treatment could mean a prison sentence. And that is incredibly counterproductive and insanely cruel. So
yeah. So last two things here. I mean, look, in the country, we have this insane disparity. It's just maddening. In New York, LA, San Francisco, you could hit a perfectly innocent person in the face with a brick and walk out of jail scot-free. In Alabama, you smoke a joint while 6 weeks pregnant. It's not advisable to do, but it's not the end of the world. No, that's it. We're going to stuff you in a prison, have you bleed out, and put you in a catch-22. So, I mean, there's just no logic anywhere to be found in any state. It's just maddening. And then the last thing is the catch-22 about abortion about rehab in this story is unbelievable. So you have to go to rehab, otherwise you can't get out of prison. You're not allowed to go to rehab. Well, then what the hell do you want her to do? What do you want her to do? And the reality is they want her to suffer in prison because they're sick. The suffering is not the bug, it's the feature. That's how right-wingers think.
Absolutely. Well, we got to take a break. When we come back, we've got more news, including someone who does belong in prison. Steve Bannon defrauded donors to the effort to build that wall on the southern border. We'll tell you about his case. We'll tell you about how he turned himself in and more coming right up.
All right, back on TYT, Cenk, Anna, and me. Me just became a member. Yes, that's a handle on YouTube. We appreciate it. Hit the join button below. And Artem Kazantsev just gifted 5 memberships. You can give memberships on YouTube now. We love you for doing that. Everybody do likewise. Look out for one another. That's fantastic. Casper.
All right, let's talk about Steve Bannon. Turned himself in today. Steve Bannon, Trump's one-time political advisor, has turned himself in at the Manhattan District Attorney's Office for allegedly defrauding donors to the We Build the Wall fundraising campaign for a wall along the southern border. So in other words, he is being accused of ripping off Trump supporters who wanted to fund an effort to build a wall to keep immigrants out of the United States. Because if there's one thing that I know about Donald Trump and those associated with him, they never miss an opportunity to rip off their own supporters. Now, he spoke to reporters after arriving to turn himself in, saying the charges were, quote, all about 60 days to the election. Because sure, why not? I mean, the election really hangs in the balance. Whether or not Steve Bannon faces consequences for his actions is really going to have an impact on the results of the midterms. Everyone's sitting around thinking about Steve freaking Bannon. Anyway, here's what the schmuck did. The state charges brought by the Manhattan District Attorney's Office resemble federal charges for which Bannon received a pardon from Trump and allege that Bannon and the We Build the Wall defrauded the fundraising effort for We Build the Wall defrauded 430 Manhattan-based donors out of $33,600. Across New York State, there were more than 11,000 donors defrauded out of more than $730,000, according to the indictment. So what does that mean, defrauded? Well, he is being accused of raising the money and then putting it in his pocket. Okay, fattening his pocket up with donor money that was meant to help build the wall. Now, the indictment charges Bannon and We Build the Wall itself with 2 counts of money laundering, which carries a maximum sentence of 5 to 15 years in prison. There are additional felony counts of conspiracy and scheme to defraud, along with 1 misdemeanor count of conspiracy to defraud. And there were 4 people involved in this. 2 of them, by the way, have already pleaded guilty. 1 of them ended the trial with a mistrial. But the quartet allegedly bilked donors to We Build the Wall and used some of the $25 million raised on personal expenses, including a luxury SUV, a golf cart, and cosmetic surgery. Fascinating. And that's according to the federal indictment. So as I mentioned, 2 of the people involved have already pleaded guilty. 2 Florida men, an Air Force veteran, and a venture capitalist indicted with Bannon in the federal case pleaded guilty in April in connection with their role in the alleged scheme to defraud We Build the Wall donors. And Bannon has pleaded not guilty to the charges, which is the least surprising element of this story. Actually, to be quite fair, I don't think any element of this story is really surprising. But we'll see what happens. And what's important to keep in mind is that the president of the United States has the ability to pardon individuals who were convicted of federal charges. In this case, we're talking about the state pursuing Steve Bannon. So let's say he's convicted of this. It doesn't really, matter if someone like Trump, for instance, gets elected and has the ability to pardon Bannon. In this case, he wouldn't, because the charges are being brought forward by the state rather than the federal government.
Okay, so I actually keep an open mind on this. If I was on the jury, I'd have a perfectly open mind, because sometimes there are nuances in cases like this. And so there's a lot of different factors, and I want to mention some of them. So, for example, what percentage of the money did they use to actually construct a wall? Was it 80% of the money? Was it only 20% of the money? Where did the rest of the money go? In a previous story, we had heard something about a yacht. But in this case, there's no discussion of a yacht. So, but there is a luxury SUV, the golf cart, etc. So, did they buy the SUV in service of the wall, or is the SUV sitting in the East Coast, and one of these crooks is, if they are crooks, driving it around, thinking, "Ha ha, you idiots! You paid for my SUV. This doesn't have anything to do with this, the wall at all." Well, those things are really, really important to whether you're going to convict him or not. And then one last part that's very relevant is, what did they tell the people that they raised the money from? Did they say, hey, listen, this is going to go to administration and it's going to go to the wall building. Obviously, we're going to have to hire some people, including us, and we're going to have to pay their salaries. Did they say any of this? Right. Now, let me tell you what we know publicly so far. At a fundraising event in 2019, Bannon told donors, quote, remember, all the money you give goes to building the wall.
Oops.
Okay, that doesn't sound good. Okay, if I'm on the jury, I want more context, but right now, that's bad. Okay, so did it go to that? Well, as Anna explained, certainly a lot of it didn't, but I've got more details. One more from ABC News here. Instead, they explained the campaign's president, Brian Kolfage, received a salary of $250,000 that was secretly funneled to him by Bannon, who directed We Build the Wall to transfer tens of thousands of dollars to a nonprofit that he controlled, which then paid Kolfage, quote, thereby obscuring the source of the funds, according to Alvin Bragg, who's the DA there. So, well, if he proves that in court and they said, oh, it's all going to go to the wall, and Bannon secretly funnels the money to his allies, and also relevant how much to himself, right? Well, then he should be in massive trouble. That's theft, and that's stealing from you guys. And as Anna pointed out, the right wing doesn't mind it at all. They love con men. They're glutton for punishment. It might be a kink. Like oh, Bannon stole from me, and they used it to get luxury SUVs. Yeah, right. They might get off on it, but it is illegal. And yes, the right wing, I know they're shocked every time, but you're not above the law.
Yeah, and look, I don't know if all the people who were allegedly defrauded are even aware of this case. I would be shocked if right-wing media were doing what we're doing right now in covering this story. And so many of them might be in the dark about the fact that their money didn't actually go toward what they intended it to go toward. But with that said, if there happen to be individuals who find it titillating to be defrauded, that's all fine and dandy. Go get yourself involved in some sort of role-playing situation. Obviously, defrauding people through a fundraising effort like this is against the law. And I'm sure that there have to be some people sprinkled in there in that group of people who were allegedly defrauded who didn't appreciate it. And so we'll see how this all plays out. Again, I think it's important that the state is pursuing Steve Bannon and this case because of the fact that he was pardoned of any federal investigation into what he allegedly did. And if it does get convicted, I'm curious to see if he ends up spending any time behind bars. We'll see.
Yeah. So, Anna, one last thing on that. So he had co-conspirators, and they would normally be charged with him in this case. They weren't, which leads to obvious speculation that they've turned evidence against them. Here's another piece of evidence on that. Kolfage, the guy that Bannon directed the $250,000 towards, apparently, was asked by Judge Annalisa Torres, and you promised that 100% of the money would be used to build that wall, is that right? And Kolfage answered, yes, Your Honor. And then Judge Torres said, after keeping that large sum of money for yourself, you did not tell the IRS you received the money. Is that right? Kolfage answered, yes, Your Honor. So that appears to be overwhelming evidence. Let's see how Steve Bannon deals with that. And guys, like right-wing lying politics 101 is, after breaking the law and committing a crime, you have to pretend you're the victim. So, oh my God, 60 days before an election, poor me, it's about me. No, the crime was about you and your SUVs. So we'll see you in court. But super last thing is, I'm worried about what Anna said. If Bannon and his lawyers are able to drag out the case long enough, Trump might win the presidency. Yeah, he can't, pardon him from a state crime, but God knows what they'll do. There's 1,000 pieces of theatrics they can do to make sure that the mob boss, Donald Trump, gets all of his captains out of jail. Like right-wingers, how do you not see that he pardoned, not like, people who were wrongly convicted, spent too long in jail. He pardoned actual hardened criminals who stole from you. But hey, if you like it, schmucks born every minute.
Well, let's move on to a shady Democrat in the state of Nevada who possibly killed a journalist. The story is insane. Las Vegas police have arrested a Clark County public administrator named Robert Tellus in connection to the murder of a journalist by the name of Jeff German. Now, Jeff German was a crime reporter over at the Las Vegas Review-Journal, and he was found in his home, or near his home, I should say, stabbed to death. After he was found stabbed to death, there was an attempt to figure out, well, who did this? And there was some evidence. There was a trail left behind, accidentally, I'm sure, by the suspect. And that trail led to Tellus in this case. So let me give you the context and tell you how this all unfolded. Now, veteran reporter Jeff German, who's 69 years old, was a local legend who covered crime, corruption, and politics in Las Vegas. He was found stabbed to death outside his home on the morning of Saturday, September 3rd. On Wednesday, police searched the residence of Clark County Public Administrator Robert Tellus, returning later in the day to arrest him on suspicion of murder. Now, they arrested him because they happened to find his DNA at the scene of the crime. Now, shortly before the announcement that Tellus had been arrested, he was captured on a stretcher, being loaded onto an ambulance. It's kind of unclear why that happened. So we've got that video for you. We could take a look. And I don't know. I don't know if he actually got hurt in some way or if, you know, the news of his arrest freaked him out and he had some sort of panic attack. But the breakthrough in the case came after police released an image of a vehicle that was tied to the homicide suspect, which happened to be a red or maroon GMC Yukon Denali. Later that evening, Review-Journal reporters observed Tellus in the driveway of his home, standing next to a vehicle matching that description. And so there were other pieces of evidence that I want to share with you, including this image. So 2 pieces of surveillance footage in the investigation were made public. The first shows a suspect wearing a wide straw hat, gloves, and a bright orange long sleeve shirt. Authorities believe that that is Tellus. They're alleging that it's Tellus and that he was scoping out the scene of the crime prior to the crime happening. The other surveillance captures a vehicle police say was tied to Tellus, and that's the Yukon Denali that I mentioned earlier. Now, why would Tellus be tied to this crime? Like, what's the motive here? Well, German had been reporting on some of his misconduct while in office, and that reporting, at least in part, contributed to the fact that Tellus did not get reelected. He lost his primary election. And I'll give you more details on what he was accused of doing in German's reporting. But before I get to that, Cenk, I wanted to give you an opportunity to chime in.
So, first of all, this is a huge tragedy because German was one of the very few reporters in the whole country who covered government corruption. So, you know, the right wing say they hate corruption. The left wing says they hate corruption. But the media generally loves it, never, ever reports on it, except German did. And so give him tremendous credit and the Las Vegas Review-Journal a tremendous credit for having the editors and the publishers that allowed that. And then because we're devolving into a developing country that is, you know, bordering on chaos, that he was murdered. Because that's apparently what happens in America these days. So now, I'm often frustrated by how dumbass people are. But in this case, I like when a criminal is dumb enough to get caught. So first of all, you're going to scope out the scene. I get it, the straw hat, so we can't see your face. We can't positively ID you and the gloves, etc. I get it. Except first, you wore a giant neon orange vest around while you're scoping things out. Why didn't you just hang a sign around your neck saying, "Hey, everyone, look at me. I'm planning on killing someone." Also with the funniest, most ridiculous straw hat anybody's ever seen. In that combo, you didn't think you'd get noticed? Okay? So then the idiot kept the straw hat and the bloody sneakers after he stabbed the guy to death and brought them home. What are you, Trump? Like, why are you bringing the evidence home? I don't mean that Trump's a murderer. I just mean, like, what? Did you keep him in a linen closet, unlocked linen closet? Okay, so I just, look, thank God the criminals are dumb. Yeah, you're supposed to throw away your bloody clothes. Did you learn nothing from the OJ trial?
I mean, he might have learned all the wrong things from the OJ trial. But in this case, I don't think there's any glove situation involved. And so let's talk a little bit about what the motive is. And clearly, Tennesse was furious at the fact that there was a journalist reporting on his alleged misconduct within his office. And by the way, the role that he served in Las Vegas was, as this public administrator, is his office would determine what happens to the estate of individuals after they pass away. So that's the role that he served in Las Vegas. But German had recently filed public records requests for emails and text messages between Tennesse and 3 other county officials, Assistant Public Administrator Rita Reed, a state coordinator Roberta Lee Kennett, remember that name, and consultant Michael Murphy. Lee Kennett was identified in previous stories as a subordinate staffer allegedly involved in an inappropriate relationship with Tennesse. So that's what some of the reporting indicated. Former employees, by the way, had alleged that Tennesse fueled a hostile work environment and carried on a relationship that impaired the office's ability to deal with the public. The complaints led to coworkers secretly videotaping the two in the back seat of Lee Kennett's car in a parking garage. The story also included claims of bullying and favoritism by Tennesse. And I should also note that in tweets that, as of today, we're still up on Twitter and you could read, Tennesse was furious about the reporting. And, he was tweeting at German, saying, oh, don't you have better things to do? So clearly he had a bone to pick with him, especially after losing the primary race.
Yeah, I can't get past the straw hat. Can you guys bring the straw hat back? I want to see that picture one more time, okay? Meanwhile, one of our members wrote, and I love doing the show with you guys. Joe Anderson wrote it. Yeah, he dressed conspicuously during that crime, like a human traffic cone. Okay, so that's true. I love how funny our members are too. tyt.com/join to become a member, or hit the join button below on YouTube. Anyways, that straw hat, that's the one he brought home. That's the one he was using to scope the scene of the crime.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, yeah, that straw hat's a dime a dozen. Could have been anybody. I just can't get over how dumb he is.
And you know what? Good.
Yes.
So hopefully justice is served in this case. I feel terrible that this veteran reporter is now gone. It seems like he actually wanted to hold people in positions of power accountable for their actions. And as you and I know too well, Cenk, that is exceedingly rare in the line of work that we're involved in. So.
Yeah, and one last time, Jeff German, we love your brother. Our hearts go out to your family, to your colleagues. Thank you for being a real journalist. And you see, when there's real journalism, it takes courage.
Absolutely. We got to take a break. When we come back for the second hour of the show, we will discuss how a huge portion of the Republican electorate wants Trump to run, even if he's charged with a serious crime.
Oh, go.
Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Young Turks. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, Cenk Uygur, and I'll see you soon.